Hello to all of you out in the Hive. It's good to see everybody and good to be back with you for week 7 of this prayer course. And this week's topic is going to be on prayer on the Examen. You need a little bit of a warm up there. So on the Examen, which is a practice that's about 500 years old. It's a practice that I've done some work on before and shared with the Hive before, but looping back around to it because it is a practice that's near and dear to my heart, and it's a practice that, last fall we had the Hive 30-day Examen challenge. And then for me, it was something that worked out really well, and I kept it up as a practice. And so then I just kept it going. And so now there's, along with introducing this practice, some time to also reflect on what I've noticed and some of the insight that I've had about practicing it for about a year now. So some of the trends and patterns that come with that. So if you haven't heard of the Examen, it is a practice that was sort of formed and formulated by Ignatius of Loyola about 500 years ago. And he was injured, and he had a lot of time on his hands in recovery to sit and think and consider his own life of faith. And so one of the things that he came up with was this Examen, this practice. And the idea of the Examen is that it helps us to consider where grace is active in our lives and at work in our lives, but also where we're in need of forgiveness and healing and wholeness. And so for me, maybe it's because I sing, maybe it's because I do instruments or exercise or whatnot. I also think of this in terms of this practice in terms of inhaling and exhaling, that the start of this practice, you're sort of inhaling and recognizing the grace at work in the first few steps of this practice. And there are some steps to it, steps for reflection. You're sort of inhaling and recognizing first the grace that happens, that God acts first out of grace. And then in a way, the practice is a bit of an exhale, that you're handing things over to God, the things that are troubling, or the things that are challenging, or the things that you're thinking about ahead of the next day, that's being handed over in sort of an exhale after having trusted in that grace. And then it sort of cycles back around. When you come back around to do the Examen again the next day, maybe you think on those things that were on your mind that you handed over in that giant exhale. And so then you come back around and think about grace as another inhaling. And I do like the illustration of breath, because breath and life and spirit sort of go together. There could be a sermon in that, who knows, for all you pastors out there. So the Examen has 5 core sort of steps to it. And like I said, the flow has grace and focus on forgiveness. And a lot of times I see this practice done at the end of the day. It could be done multiple times throughout the day. I think Ignatius, in his book Spiritual Practices, advocated for it to be done many times a day, possibly, I'm trying to remember, like every hour. But for me personally, I look at it each night. So the first step is to be aware of God's presence. And that's not really a question, it's more of a statement that God is there, whether we recognize it or not. And sometimes we do recognize it, but it goes in with that idea of grace, that God's presence is the very first thing. God shows up first and foremost, that God is with us. And that is that grace at work, being aware of God's presence. And this involves taking time to be still and breathe and recognize that God is there with us, regardless of what's going on. So that's the first step. And then the next step is to review the day with gratitude. And for me, this is a very helpful step because sometimes in my mindset, I can really get fixated on the difficult parts of my day and forget to think that maybe there were some places where God was showing up. That even through difficult parts of my day, that perhaps there were people in my day that were making that day more bearable, or that other things happened outside of difficult stuff in my day. And maybe it's just my nature that I tend to fixate on the negative and sometimes forget to look at the positive things that happen, but to give those moments of gratitude, those moments of grace, give them space that they do deserve. And so I try to, so this is a reminder to do that. This is part of that taking in and remembering that grace is present and reviewing the day with gratitude. And I would also add then, how are those blessings of the day, those gratitude moments, how are they connected with people and our relationships? How are they connected to the people we are surrounded by and the communities around us? So then the third step is to pay attention to your emotions. What is the emotional content of the day? And what is the span of that emotional content? As we've been talking about throughout this prayer course, our prayers, it's perfectly acceptable and encouraged to be honest about our emotions and know that we're in good company when our prayers span the whole gamut of human emotion. So it's perfectly acceptable and perfectly encouraged to acknowledge all the emotions in the day. And I would even add, why did I feel that way? At certain points in my day, it's sort of like as I replay over the course of the day, why did I feel that way? And then like the previous step where we are reviewing the day with gratitude, when it comes to our emotions, how are those emotions connected with particular people and our relationships with particular people? Is it typical to be particularly joyful with someone? Is it normal to be particularly stressed or feel tension around another person? Why is that? Was this a day where our emotions around somebody might have bucked a norm or, gone outside the norm? Someone that we're normally joyful to be around, was there tension, and why was that? So paying attention to the entire emotional content of the day. And I would say that this is a bit of a pivot point, this middle step, that this is a pivot point in the Examen for me. And this is something that I've noticed over time, that this is that point where I've been looking over the course of the day and reviewing it with gratitude. But then as I get to this emotional content, I start thinking about this next side of the Examen. Where is forgiveness and reconciliation needed? Where is further grace and wholeness needed in my day? Which flows right into the next part, in that kind of exhaling and handing over the day to God. It's to choose a feature from the day and pray for it. And I tend to look at the forgiveness side first and foremost and say, where am I in need of forgiveness and reconciliation? Where are those moments in my day that were particularly tough? And I will be looking for grace to move forward from those moments in the day. Was there a particularly tough interaction with another person that I need grace for? Is there a situation that I'm feeling particularly stressed about or apprehensive about, and I'm not sure what the repercussions will be, and I hope that there will be grace in the situation moving forward? Where do I need forgiveness and where do I need reconciliation moving forward in the day? But I would also then add to, not to get caught up in the negative side, but to also say, if there was a particularly good part of the day, a good feature of the day, to pray about it and give thanks for it and say, I hope there's more of that grace to come. That maybe if I experienced grace that I wasn't expecting in the day, that I hope that there is more of it to come. And then there is the next piece of this, the final part, looking forward to tomorrow. And what is to come? How do you feel as you look ahead? And again, handing over this tomorrow to God and saying, how do you feel as you look ahead? And that can really shape our prayers and our intentions. And oftentimes when I do this practice, I try to pick a word, just one word that would sum up either my feelings or my intention toward the next day. So what is that one word that I would put on the next day? And then that becomes looking forward to tomorrow. And maybe it becomes a mantra for the next day. So there's many different ways to practice this. And I've noticed over the course of the year, my best time to do that, even if I'm tired, the best time to do that is in the evening. It helps me sort of put the day away and unwind and get my brain to sort of unpack so that I can sleep at night. And I've noticed over time that sometimes pulling the intention from the prior day helps focus me for the next day. And so sometimes I put that word in a visible place so that I can remember what I was thinking about. And so it becomes a continuous prayer over the course of this year. And it's helped me to notice some patterns where I've had periods where maybe that part of the examen where we look ahead to tomorrow, maybe I notice a trend that there's been several weeks in a row where I look towards tomorrow with apprehension. And as I start to notice those trends, I start to ask why that is. And it helps inform, how have I really been doing over the course of months or weeks? How have I really been doing lately? And it helps me to face that with a bit of an honesty, that if I start noticing an overall tone over the course of the examen, then it's something to pay attention to. And sometimes that tone is joyful and hopeful, and sometimes that tone is weary and tired. And then it helps me think through, so where do I need to ask for help, or where do I need to maybe think about bending those intentions into the next day? So like I said, a number of ways to practice this. Some people do this in the morning and the evening, and they kind of look at differences between the two. Another possible way to practice this could be to say, start the first 3 steps in the evening, that gratitude part, and then pick up with the other steps in the morning to pick up that new day and continue that examen into the morning. So that's a possibility too. There's simplified versions out there that we've done with kids, just to say what are your highs for the day, what are the lows for the day, and what are the God moments for the day. So it's recognizing God's presence, and then also acknowledging the emotional baggage that goes along with the day. And then that acknowledgement can form a prayer for thanksgiving and a petition on what can we pray for moving into the next day. So then, as I've mentioned before in the examen, and I believe someone did mention this on the page, another handy app out there, because there's apps for the examen and it's phenomenal, is the app Reimagining the Examen. And let's see, it's it looks a little like, line this up with my, I don't know if this is going to catch. There you go. Looks kind of like this, the Today's Examen, Reimagining the Examen. I think this is one of my favorite ways to kind of take the examen with me, and an easy way to share it with others. It has different prompts that go with it. So there are different questions like, am I free or unfree? Asking for grace, uncovering hidden truths. Was I present or absent? So these are different sort of themes for the examen, and it walks you through a meditation through each one. So it comes with an introduction and comes with prompts and questions, and so that's another helpful one to go with. But I would, again, and this is an examen that maybe you can just do in prayer and in silence. I'm more of someone who journals, and so journaling works for me and writing that down. Sometimes single words are helpful as well as you go through these different parts of the examen. But I would challenge you, we had a lot of fun doing this last year on the 30-day challenge. And so then I would come back around, and if you haven't tried it before, or if you've tried it and then put it away for a while and want to come back to it, challenge you to give it a try this week and share some of your observations about doing the examen for the week, and to see if that has any impact on your day and moving forward. So it's been really great to have you guys all along for the ride. The in-person group and the online community has been phenomenal. And so thanks so much for tuning in and checking out this material. And we will continue. We still have, this is week 7, so we still have 3 more weeks of the prayer course, 3 more weeks in this fantastic journey around prayer. And so I hope to hear from you soon this week. So take care and enjoy and have a great week.